In this video, I'm going to teach you how to make this chrome typography effect in Blender, and I'm also going to be using Adobe Illustrator. So if you want to learn how to make this, you can just keep watching. Okay, so the first thing you want to do before we even start off on Blender is we want to get our type ready to edit in Blender, and I'm going to use Adobe Illustrator. There are other free alternatives out there that you can look up, but for this tutorial, I will be using that. So the first thing you want to do is open up or grab the type tool and write whatever you want to write for the tutorial. And then I'm going to click the font that I want to use. The font that I'm going to be using is called Wriggle. It's a free for personal use font. Oops. Okay, so once you've actually selected your font, in order for you to be able to edit it in Blender, you have to actually right click and press create outline, or you can also press Shift Control O. And now your font is ready to export. So in order to export it, we're going to go to File, Export, Export As, and you're going to have to make sure that it's an SVG, and that'll make it editable. And you press OK. Okay, so now you want to go back to Blender, and basically when you open Blender up, it'll like have a cube right here and like a camera and a light. I usually just delete all of that, or I hide it by pressing the I on the outliner panel. So the first thing we want to do is import the SVG we just made in Adobe Illustrator. And the way we do that is by going to File, Import, Import SVG. Just a disclaimer, when I first started Blender, I was literally stuck at this part because I kept uploading it with this one, SVG as grease pencil. If you do that, it's not going to work. So just make sure it's a scalable vector graphic. And then you're just going to go ahead and pick your file. And you might not be able to see it, but you can either zoom in, or what I like to do is just left click and I highlight it, and I just press S, just make it as big as I want with my mouse. And notice how it's laying flat on the x-axis. So I usually turn it over by doing RX90, and that'll turn it over to this point of view. So if you notice, if you click each letter individually, you'll notice that they're just separate objects. So in order to just make it one object or join the letters, I want to click one letter and then highlight all the letters and press Control J. Okay, so now the next step is we want to add some width or girth to our object. And we do that by clicking the object, and we go over here to the properties panel, go to this object data properties, which is the little green string, 2 dots at the end, and we scroll down to geometry, and then this is where you can add an extrusion. So you can add as much as you want, so I'm just going to start off with 0.01, and it'll make it that thick. You can literally go berserk with this, but for this tutorial I'm just going to stick to that. And in order to align this little thing right here to the center of the object, you can right click your mouse and press Set Origin to Geometry, and that'll just center that. Okay, so I do want to add an outline to this text. So before I even do anything, I'm just gonna copy and paste this. So Control C, then Control V, and I'll just move it out the way. And then with this first copy, in order to make it an outline, all you would have to do is in the same object data properties, you want to go to fill mode and press none. And as you can see, that'll just make it an outline, but it's still not, I guess, thick enough to actually look like an outline on this object. So in order to fix that, you want to scroll down in that same tab and you go to bevel and you go to depth and you add depth to it. So I don't really do that much. Do like 1.0.0015 and that adds depth to it, and then I'll just move it back and it'll look like an outline. But it's still not thick enough for me, so you can just play around with it. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to sculpt my text, and that'll make everything just look better. So in order to do that, you first have to convert this text into a mesh. So what you want to do is right click, convert to mesh, and then you want to go to the modifier properties, add modifier, and remesh. I like to go to the smooth tab. You can use any of these really. I know people use voxel a lot, but I suck at math, so I just use smooth because it's like whole numbers. And you want to uncheck this box, and then this number depends usually on what your computer can handle. Depends usually on what your computer can handle. So I usually go up to 9 or 10. And it should look like that. As you can see, the edges are a bit fuzzy, but that can be fixed while we're sculpting after this. In order to apply this, you just press the check mark, apply. And now we go to object mode and we click sculpt mode. And in sculpt mode, you'll be able to adjust the shape and the inflation and basically a lot of things of your text. But for this tutorial, we're just mainly going to use the inflate tool and the smooth tool. So I'm first going to start off with the smooth tool, and you can adjust the radius up here and the strength. And you just basically go all over your text. And then I go in with the inflate tool and I kind of make these areas a little bit more, how can we say this, puffy? Okay, and then I'm just going to go over with the smooch one more time. So now that we're done with sculpting, we can go back to our original mode, which was object mode. So just click up here and press object mode, and we're back. So the next step would be to add a material. So the way I do it is, or add the chrome material, the way I do it is I open a new window. I just hover my mouse in between these two tabs and a plus sign should pop up, and then I just drag it. So yeah, just drag it like this, and you want to change the editor type. So it's the button next to the object mode, and you're going to go to shade editor. And in order to close this, I just usually close this, I press N. And then I want to click on the object. So you're going to have to do this for both the outline and the object. And I scroll this over and I remove the texture that comes with it once you already upload the text. It just comes with this like basic black matte texture. I press the X and then I press add new. And I'm going to click the outline and do the same. So it should look white like this. And in order to do the metallic texture, all you have to do is go to the metallic option and go to 1. You can just slide it or enter 1. And then for the roughness, you bring it down to 0. And if you notice, you can't really see it here. And in order to see your materials, you'll have to go to the material preview tab, which is up here. Right now, we're in viewport shading tab, but the tab next to it, you click it, and then as you can see, you're able to see the chrome material. And then we're just going to do the same thing with the outline. If you scroll in, your object that you sculpted might be very pixelated. That's very normal, but the way to fix this is by right clicking and you press shade smooth, and as you can see, it smoothed out the pixels. And I want my outline to be slightly darker than my actual object, so I can just adjust the color up here. And you can honestly play around with the metallic material by adjusting the roughness and making it less reflective, or you can also adjust the actual metallic input and make it more of like a pearlescent kind of vibe. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to stick to the basic metallic material. Okay, so if you render this, I'll show you real quick. If you render this, you go to render image. It's gonna look weird, and that's because you have not added an environment texture. So basically, your actual render results will be able to be previewed on this tab next to the one we're in. And if you click it, as you can see, it's purple, just like the render that I just showed you. And in order to fix this, we're going to have to add an HDRI, which is a type of environment texture. Yeah, so the way you do this is you go to the shade editor side, and you click on object, you go to world. So usually this is not going to be here. I just have my default settings. So this is how it's going to show up. It's going to look like this. And you would have to go to add texture, environment texture, and you'll just connect the nodes from color to color, and it'll make it like this again. And then you open and you add your HDRI. They look like this. You can honestly just go on Google and look up free HDRI. I get a lot of them from Polyhaven, which I'll link in the description box. And for the purposes of this tutorial, I forgot the one I used originally, but you can pick whichever one. It gives you a different look. So for example, I'll just pick this one and I'll end up looking like this. Or if I pick a different environment, it can look completely different. So I'm just going to stick to the other one. And I also want to add a background because I don't want my background to be this environment. So I can easily just do that by adding a plane. So I add mesh plane and I turn it around by doing RX90, and I make it bigger by pressing S and dragging my mouse. And as you can see, I now have a background basically for my text, and I can just move it back. Okay, I think I'm gonna go with this one. And for the environment, you can also adjust how bright it is in the shade editor by lowering or adding to the strength. I think I can go with 0.8. Okay, so now I want to actually add a gradient background. I don't want it to look this plain. So the way I do that is by switching from world back to object and making sure my plane is selected. And then I press new, and that'll bring this up, which is, similar to what we have for our other materials. And I actually want to make a gradient. So I'm going to press Shift A and press search, and I'm going to look up mixed RGB, which would allow us to add two different colors and connect that to the base color. And then I'm going to add Shift A gradient texture and just leave it to the side. And then I'm going to add a Shift A color ramp. So you want to just connect the color ramp, or you want to connect the alpha to the alpha, and like this. Okay, so you just want to connect everything, and I actually want my gradient to come from the bottom, not the side. There's various ways you can do this, but I feel like the easiest way is just to literally rotate it the colors that I want. So I'm gonna go with black and like a blue. And you can honestly adjust the roughness of the background, but I don't want that. I kind of want it matte. And you can also make it appear darker by adjusting the specular. And I'll just bring it all the way down. And I also can adjust where my gradient colors start with the color ramp, so I can move it up or I can move it down. Next thing we need to do in order to get it rendered ready is add a camera. So when you open up Blender, it usually does have a camera already there if you haven't deleted it. And the way you look at what your camera's looking at is you press the little camera tab right here. And as you can see, the camera is too far away. So in order to fix this, I can press the N tab, I press view, and then I press camera to view. And then that'll help let me move the camera with my mouse and turn it around to whatever view I would like it at. I'm using a 1:1 ratio, but you can change that over here. It's the output properties, and you can change the size right here. Okay, so in order to render this, you would just have to, first we're going to go over here to the render properties, and then we're going to click ambient occlusion and screen space reflections, and that just makes everything look better, and it adds kind of like a shadow, and it adds a reflection of the background. So always just before you render, in the Eevee render engine, make sure you press ambient occlusion and screen space reflections. And then what you want to do is go ahead and press render image, and that's just gonna load. And yeah, that's how it's gonna look. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you want to learn how to animate this same chrome typography in the next video, leave a comment below and subscribe.